Now, let's join ace broadcaster Mamode Akugha as he takes us inside the Niger Delta.
Hello out there and welcome to the program. It's Inside the Niger Delta, the authentic voice of Nigeria's oil-rich region. I am Mamode Akugha. As usual, Inside the Niger Delta brings you some of the most interesting and intriguing developments in the region. And today's episode is no exception. First, we bring you a special report on how far the federal government has gone with the establishment of modular refineries, which it promised to put in place in the Niger Delta as part of efforts to provide economic empowerment for its people. Next on our lineup is a position canvassed by the convener of the Midwestern Summit, Dr. Don Pedro Obaseki, that it was high time the peoples of the old Midwestern region, later Bendel State, and now comprising Edo and Delta states, rose against political balkanization and marginalization. Moving on, we'll bring you another special report on the current face-off between Nigerian governors and the organized labor over the payment of the new minimum wage and how all that plays out in the Niger Delta. And finally, on today's package, we bring you the position of Inside the Niger Delta on the ongoing racketeering in the solid minerals sector, which has dealt a heavy blow on the Nigerian economy. Inside the Niger Delta, we'll be back in just a moment. Don't go away.
Inside the Niger Delta.
Glad to know you're still there. And in case you're just joining us, it's Inside the Niger Delta, the authentic voice of Nigeria's oil-rich region. One of the key components of the federal government's new vision for the Niger Delta is the granting of licenses to entrepreneurs in the region. While the federal government says the initiative is to encourage increased local participation in the oil and gas sector of the economy, some Niger Deltans have expressed doubts over government's sincerity in the implementation of the project. Correspondent Chika Obodozie has more.
Those young men and women who are involved in illegal refining, our approach to that is that we must engage them by establishing modular refineries so that they can participate in legal refining, not illegal refining. And we are committed to making sure that the young men and women of the Niger Delta are properly engaged.
Several months after Nigeria's Vice President Yemi Osinbajo announced the planned establishment of modular refineries to benefit private investors of Niger Delta extraction, most Niger Deltans are getting increasingly worried that there's nothing on the ground to suggest sincerity of purpose on the part of the federal government.
If the federal government is sincere to give us modular refinery, you come down, discuss with the people. You want to give somebody a license in Abuja to come and open a refinery in our community, it will not going to work. There is no proper feasibility studies. It's just a scam.
Former Delta State Governor Emmanuel Uduaghan is of the view that the operation of modular refineries will not address the nagging issue of unemployment in the Niger Delta.
What is modular refinery? Refineries, they are not cheap. They don't come cheap. All these young people cannot put money together and get an own modular refinery. The bank will not give them money to go and own modular refinery because they are not cheap. One. Two, they are not technologically friendly to employing several persons. Modular refinery, because of its kind of technology, is highly automated. They don't need too many people. So it will not employ many of our youths.
At an event organized recently in Port Harcourt to sensitize the public on the Niger Delta new vision, some officials of the presidency, however, debunked claims that the project for the establishment of modular refineries is a scam.
All the 44 licenses, believe me, there is nothing like governor, there is nothing like minister, there is nothing like anybody. Government made it very clear. It's going to be private sector-led business.
The thing is that once you're able to meet the requirements, you'll be given the licenses. And there are different stages. There's the license to establish, there's the license to construct, and there's also the license to operate. These are different licenses that you apply for. And there are different stages as you go on with the process.
The new Niger Delta vision is a 20-point agenda conceived to address the challenges of political instability, insecurity, and underdevelopment in the region. Officials of the presidency noted it was a genuine attempt to redefine development initiatives in the Niger Delta.
The sincerity of this government is not in doubt. A lot of our policies are, people-friendly policies. The government has gone all out. All of the things we have set out to do, we have been doing them. And I must say that, even in the engagement the Vice President had with the stakeholders of the region, he did mention that the people deserve more. The people deserve more. The people of the region deserve more. And the reason is obvious. This is the region that lays the golden egg. This is where the resources of our country is being obtained. So, I mean, it's a no-brainer and I dare say that region must be taken care of.
The much ado about the successful delivery of the modular refineries in the Niger Delta is not without basis. When completed and delivered, the modular refineries are expected to create a channel to effectively utilize the large untapped skills of several Niger Delta youths operating artisanal refineries at huge environmental and economic costs.
There is indeed an urgent need to stop artisanal refineries in the Niger Delta, whose operations have contributed to a large extent the current atmospheric pollution currently ravaging Port Harcourt and its neighboring cities in the region. Meanwhile, professionals from the old Midwestern region and later Bendel State, which now comprises of Edo and Delta states, will on December 12 this year hold a summit with the objective to rekindle its lost glory, take a position on the restructuring of the Nigerian Federation, and reassert its power and influence within the context of the Nigerian Federation today. Convener of the Midwestern Summit, Dr. Don Pedro Obaseki, made a disclosure in a chat with Inside the Niger Delta.
And until the advent or the entrance of the military into our political space, we were actually 1/4 out of the 4 federating units of Nigeria: Northern region in Kaduna, Western region with the capital in Ibadan, Eastern region with the capital in Enugu, and then the Midwestern region with the capital in Benin City. So when Nigeria was balkanized by military fiat by Gowon, they divided us into 12. So the Midwestern peoples of Edo and Delta became 1/12. And then in 1976, February the 3rd, Murtala Muhammad re-balkanized Nigeria and divided us into 19. So we that used to be 1 out of 4 regions, we suddenly became 1 out of 19. And we think we were the breadbasket and the brain power of this nation. And in 1990, we became 30 states in Nigeria. And that was when Ibrahim Babangida, maybe out of magnanimity, decided to split Benin Delta, which is Bendel or Midwest, into Edo and Delta. And today we are 36 states in Nigeria, and out of those 36 states, we just have 2. So we who used to be 1/4, we are now 2/36 or 1/18. There is no greater marginalization of the Edo and Delta peoples, of the 12 tribes of the Midwest.
Obaseki noted that the idea behind the Midwestern Summit is to get all stakeholders to come up with a common agenda to determine the direction of its people in the next general elections.
Because we've read both of the manifestos or the agenda or the work plan, whatever they are called, whether it is next level or get Nigeria working again. And we are beginning to wonder, in the year 2019, as Nigerians go again to the polls, what is the fate of that critical, crucial nexus of this country? So we are calling a summit of all persons of Edo and Delta extraction to come together so that we can have a Midwest Charter. And then we are inviting the major players. They should come and tell the Midwest people, what is our fate as a unique pivotal component of this nation.
Resuscitated in 2017, the Midwestern movement was formed many years ago in Sapele town in today's Delta state. And now to labor matters. Workers in the Niger Delta have threatened to unseat governors in the region who failed to implement the new minimum wage in the forthcoming general elections. Meanwhile, some professionals in the oil-rich region have attributed the much ado about the payment of the 30,000 naira new minimum wage to the country's operation of a flawed fiscal policy over the years. A possible return to fiscal federalism, as was practiced before the advent of the 1966 Unitary Constitution, they insist, will provide lasting solutions to the country's numerous fiscal challenges.
President Muhammadu Buhari, on receiving the report of the Tripartite Committee on the Review of the National Minimum Wage earlier this month, had approved 30,000 naira as a new benchmark for monthly pay package for Nigerian workers. But the fate of the workers appear uncertain following the submission by some governors that their states aren't in a stable financial position to pay the new minimum wage. Chairman of the Nigerian Governors Forum and Governor of Zamfara State, Abdulaziz Yari, had told newsmen at the end of an emergency meeting of state governors recently in Abuja that implementing the new minimum wage was far from reality, a position that is being trailed by a backlash from Nigerian workers.
Any government or any state that is lying on the ground that they are not oil state, that they are not going to pay the 30,000 naira, I will say the government of that state lack leadership.
In the wake of the recent oil price crash in the international markets, Nigeria's monoproduct economy became badly hit, with the states at the receiving end. The 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory, all dependent on federal allocation from crude oil sales, became stranded and were unable to pay salaries. That same year, President Buhari introduced a new regime of financial bailout for the states. A salary loan of about 338 billion naira was disbursed to states that were unable to meet their salary obligations at an interest rate of 9% approved by the Central Bank of Nigeria. After carrying out similar gestures in the intervening period, the federal government in April 2017 dished out the sum of 1.75 trillion naira as extra statutory allocation to the states.
If governors say they are unable to pay 30,000, it questions actually it's morally at the background of what they themselves are taking. I mean, it's open secret. Presently, I'm sure there are governors that are taking over 1 billion naira as a security vote. How much is the wage bill of a state?
Most informed Nigerians believe that financial bailout to the states will not solve the country's current fiscal challenges. For those in the Niger Delta, the current scenario is only a wake-up call for the operation of fiscal federalism, which will encourage the states to become productive and financially transparent. They even argue that with the right fiscal policy in place, the Niger Delta state can pay far above the newly prescribed minimum wage.
It brings to fore the issue of restructuring and the federal system we are running. Because if we are practicing it, each state should be able to know what it can carry based on the resources available to the state. When we have planlessness in our system of governance, we will find it difficult.
In the United States of America, every state pays different wages. Even to their governors, their legislators, they pay different wages depending on their process. You would not expect a state like Jigawa to be in a position to pay the same kind of minimum wage that Rivers State will pay. And I think that those of our other states who have the wherewithal should pay even much more.
The federal government says it will transmit an executive bill on the new national minimum wage to the National Assembly for its passage in the shortest time possible. While this appears to be a sign of victory for Nigerian workers, labor leaders in the country have been enjoined to sensitize their colleagues on the need to embrace productivity, as labor is essentially about wealth creation.
Labor itself has a problem because when government ever tries to restructure its workforce, labor is the problem. Labor should know that they can have 100,000 as minimum wage if they are willing to accept the fact that the public service has been an unwilling cash cow that needs to be milked and to be shed of its excess weight.
Some state governors have since indicated their readiness to pay the new minimum wage, while others have refused to shift grounds. In the meantime, Nigerian workers have vowed that the forthcoming elections will be payback time for all labor-unfriendly governors in the Niger Delta and the rest of the country.
Our last issue, as I informed you earlier on the program, is the position of Inside the Niger Delta on the ongoing racketeering in the solid minerals sector, which has cost Nigeria trillions of naira that could have been deployed for the even development of the country. In April 2001, international journalist Aditya Manshweta published The Bleeding Mountains of Nepal, one of the most compelling works in the country's underdevelopment. The book exposes how the citizens of Nepal, both the ordinary and highly placed in society, had mismanaged its fortunes in the last 50 years. In The Bleeding Mountains of Nepal, Mr. Shweta gives an account of how the country is being fleeced, milked and wrenched by insiders, outsiders and even donor agencies, leading to widespread poverty in the South Asian country. Nepal's poverty data nearly a decade after, in 2010, showed that 25.2% of its population lived below the national poverty line. And by 2016, it was reported that for every 1,000 babies born in the country, 35 die before their 5th birthday. Much like Nepal's, the Nigerian economy has been stifled and retarded by sheer greed and mismanagement over the years. In October 2012, the British Broadcasting Corporation BBC reported that despite Nigeria's vast oil wealth, 90% of its citizens lived on less than $2 per day, a scenario that it attributed to official mismanagement and corruption. According to the report, a staggering $29 billion was lost to an apparent price-fixing scam involving the sale of natural gas between 2002 and 2012. The magnitude of corruption in the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation (NNPC) and indeed the petroleum sector, which till date remains the country's cash cow, is indeed unimaginable. Earlier in May 2012, Nigerians were outraged upon discovering a huge scandal surrounding a scheme the government introduced as fuel subsidy. The House of Representatives report on Nigeria's fuel subsidy revealed that contrary to the government's claim in 2011 that it was subsidizing fuel at a cost of $8 billion, the actual figure was more than $17 billion per annum. A key finding of the probe was that while the country was paying subsidy for 59 million liters of fuel a day, Nigerians were actually consuming about 35 million liters on a daily basis. It was soon discovered that the fuel subsidy scheme was an avenue for the patronage and appeasement of some fat cats in the system. The Nigerian government had deliberately allowed the country's refineries to rot away and commissioned fraudulent companies to import refined petroleum products from faraway and nearby countries in a racket that flourished and created billionaires overnight. Little wonder the number of fuel importers in the country increased from 6 to 140 by 2011. The official sleaze in Nigeria's oil sector had given rise to the ascendancy of some misguided youths in the Niger Delta who, in collaboration with some unscrupulous state officials, have been engaged in crude oil theft on a massive scale. By 2011, it was reported that crude oil theft have reached emergency levels, with 250,000 barrels of the black gold stolen every day, amounting to about 10% of annual production at a cost of $6 billion per annum. The general impression is that the greatest threat to the Nigerian economy lies in the mismanagement of the petroleum sector, but this is far from the truth. There is enough evidence, however, to suggest that large-scale theft in the solid mineral sector has equally brought the economy on its knees over the years. It is a known fact that the solid mineral sector, an otherwise vibrant sector of the economy, has been left lying fallow due to the lack of insight on the part of successive managers of the economy. At the last count, it was reported that the country is endowed with about 34 solid minerals identified in 450 locations across the country, and they include large deposits of bitumen, gold, coal, iron ore, lead, and many others. These solid minerals, which have been largely relegated, are found in different parts of the country, and they have been constantly mined in some northern states of the country by individuals operating without land rights, mining licenses, and other relevant documents. In Plateau State, for instance, where virtually every local government area is endowed with precious metals, the exploitation of abundant precious metals are left in the hands of illegal miners. Only last week, 10 persons were reportedly killed in a clash involving two groups of illegal miners over the control of a lucrative mining spot at Jero village in Giel district of Jos South local government area of the state. The tragedy, which was confirmed by Plateau State Command of the Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps, is only one of such similar incidents recorded over the years in Nigeria's north following government's neglect of the solid minerals sector. This brings to the fore allegations that the country is bleeding from an untold sabotage in the solid minerals sector of the economy. Only recently, the Global Rights Nigeria and International Rights Organization alleged that the country loses over 152 billion naira worth of gold annually to illegal gold exports. This allegation is supported by a recent World Bank-assisted study conducted by the Nigerian Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, NITI, which reveals that government's laxity in the sector has given rise to illegal miners who are currently in control of over 80% of the mining fields of Nigeria's precious metals. NITI's position was also corroborated by the Federal Ministry of Mines and Steel Development, which recently reported that the federal government lost a whopping $9 billion to the activities of illegal miners in the solid minerals sector of the country. Recently, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, arrested one Abba Ali Yahya with illegally mined gold from Zamfara State worth 1.2 billion naira, which he was trying to illegally export to Dubai, the United Arab Emirates. Also at the Lagos airport, the EFCC impounded gold worth 211 million naira, which was also being illegally exported to Dubai, United Arab Emirates. Vice President Yemi Osinbajo could not have been far from the truth when in the month of November last year he averred that Nigeria was not poor because it had no resources, but that its poverty was a result of mindless stealing and mismanagement of the country's vast resources. From all indications, it is clear that the case study of Nepal employed to draw significant parallels with the Nigerian experience only amounts to scratching the surface with regard to the mismanagement of the nation's natural resources. Is it that the federal government is incapable of mining the country's solid minerals for national income? Or is the federal government deliberately turning a blind eye to the illegal mining of solid minerals in the country to the benefit of certain individuals? Furthermore, why the concentration on the crude oil from the Niger Delta as the sole source of income? Will the Niger Delta states ever benefit from the sharing of proceeds from the sale of solid minerals, just as other states are currently benefiting from the sale of crude oil? These questions, and indeed numerous others, are begging for answers. We call on the National Economic Council, therefore, to carry out a full-scale investigation of Nigeria's natural mineral resources, a process that should be backed with an adequate monitoring mechanism. It is instructive to note that such a process must necessarily carry along the host communities that have been relegated to the background with the objective of making them part owners of the natural resources residing in their domains. As Professor Oshibajo rightly points out, Nigeria can only come out of its current economic doldrums only if the proceeds of its abundant mineral resources are properly accounted for and exploited for the common good of the generality of its citizens. And that's how far we can go on this edition of the program. Inside the Niger Delta, we'll be back same time, same station next week. On behalf of the production crew, I am Mamode Akugha, appreciating you for staying tuned. It's bye for now.